Hi, welcome to Farm Hoppers Meet the Growers. In this episode, we're at Tomato Jos, a startup aiming to boost tomato paste production in Nigeria.
So welcome to the farm. The headquarters is 4 hectares in size, and right now most of our stuff is in containers because we haven't yet built any permanent assets except for the greenhouse. So we're going to drive down to the greenhouse and show you what we're growing there. Yeah, so these were all like planted in November. So it's kind of amazing that they're still alive. But actually, if you planted this, it would still pick up. These are, you can see the roots of the plants. The reason we grow them in trays and not in like a local nursery is because you can actually pull individually them out,
And
you don't damage and transplant them. And also because this way they are able to get more consistent nutrients and things like that. So they're better able to grow. If you notice the difference between like a local seedling and one of our seedlings, one is that we have much more root development, and two is that we have much more sturdy stems. So this all helps the plant to not go into shock when it gets transplanted. Because if you think about the greenhouse, it's kind of like the womb, right? Like they're very comfortable, they're in a small controlled environment. Then when they get out into the main field, it's very hot, it's very dry.
Very hostile.
It's a very hostile environment. It's a very surprisingly different environment than what they're used to. So we try and prepare them as best as we can for that process. The reason we have so many extra seedlings is because, like I said, the contractor's delays made us unable to farm the full 35 hectares. So we sowed seedlings for 35 hectares, but we only ended up planting about, I think, 12 hectares or 15 hectares of tomato, maybe 17 if we include the outgrow or something like that. So we ended up having a lot of extra ones.
Wow, and these are the extras.
These are the extras. So we're now transplanting some of these into the greenhouse to try and maybe do some rainy season tomato farming. But we also have other stuff in the greenhouse too. And this is just kind of on the side. Like we're not really investing a huge amount of resources.
What was this?
This is broccoli.
Broccoli, okay.
Yeah. So I don't think any of the broccoli heads have started to form yet. They're still a little premature, but we'll start to see broccoli heads coming out in the next couple weeks.
I know, I've only seen broccoli in the movies.
Well,
yeah.
it's nice. We probably need to thin these out and have only one plant per bag. So we might have them. This is coriander.
Okay, yeah.
This is a little bit overgrown. We should really be trying to sell it. But we were just kind of experimenting. This is more coriander here. Then
Yeah,
we have,
great with pasta.
How are you?
Good morning.
Morning.
How was it?
Fine, thank you. How's work?
Thank God.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
These are tomato seedlings that we've transplanted.
Okay.
So they hopefully should start to pick up soon. We should start to see some new growth in them.
Interesting.
Yeah, for the open field tomato farms, we put about 25,000 seedlings per hectare into the farm. So that means for 35 hectares, we need over 1 million seedlings. So when we're in season, all of this will be tomato seedlings. We won't have any of these vegetables and stuff here. We're just trying to make use of the assets in the off-season.
In the meantime.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Maximum efficiency.
Trying to make money where we can. So what we can do now is, if you want, we can go down to the farm.
Okay, yeah, let's...
This is, like I said, the first field. We planted it, I think, about maybe 6 weeks ago. And you can see we've had challenges on irrigation. Hey, Yomi. How are you doing? We're doing a video.
Yeah, we go to the spring.
Oh, they're spraying?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I may have these guys take your and Bala's pictures in a little bit.
Okay.
So just FYI.
All right. Hold on.
Nice to meet you, man.
Well
done.
Okay, great. So this is one of the sections of the fields where the land is sloped too much. So our contractor didn't really measure the contours. So the water was running down so fast that it couldn't soak into the beds. So what we've been trying to do is make like mini dams so that we can block the water. So like if you look inside here, you can see like this is a mini dam here. So this water is actually able to soak in.
Right.
Yeah. But these plants, I mean, like, they're tragically small. They shouldn't be this size. a good estimation of what your yield is going to be
Mhm.
is how many fruits you get per plant. So
Right.
if you're able to get like 50 fruits per
Per
plant,
plant.
it means you should approximately be able to get 50 tons per hectare.
Right. Okay.
But you can see like we don't even have maybe 20 flowers, and then not all of these flowers will turn into fruits.
Fruits. True.
One of the concerns is because we're so late to the season, if it gets too hot, the flowers actually just drop off the plants, and then you don't get any fruits. I had planned to show the governor, A, the farm, but B,
Yeah.
like all of these people that live inside our land, and
Right.
be like, hey,
There's a
like you
community
can
here.
see like that house there, right?
Right,
Like
yeah.
that's the graveyard is over there, and this is like the sort of short part of the sea. Right now you can see this
Yeah.
is the part of the land that is now
Isn't
cleared but hasn't been
cultivated yet.
cultivated.
We're here with Mira of Tomato Jos. We're not at Jos. We're actually in Kaduna, but yeah. So Mira, I'd like to first ask, why tomatoes?
Honestly, if I knew how hard tomatoes were to grow, I wouldn't have chosen them. I chose them because back in 2008, when I was first in Nigeria, I used to do a lot of work up in the north, and there's a certain time of year when tomatoes are in oversupply.
Right.
And I saw that, and it just seemed really very shocking. You just see tomatoes like lining the roads.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to dry them and cut them and save them and preserve them. And at the same time, as I was learning about Nigerian cuisine, I saw that tomato
Tomatoes
paste
were
and
like
tomatoes are like,
A core.
yeah, they're a core ingredient.
That jollof.
Jollof rice,
Yeah.
red stew, moi moi, all these different things.
Yep.
And so it seemed crazy to me that the tomato paste was being imported, but all
Right.
of these tomatoes were just kind of,
going to waste here, basically.
yeah. So I said, I'd like to work on that.
Okay.
So it was just random, really.
Okay.
I wish it had been onions or maize or rice or something that's easier to grow, but it was tomatoes. Now I'm
Okay.
stuck with it.
Well, could you just give us a background to how you guys started?
Sure. So I had the idea for Tomato Jos back in 2008, 2009. At the time, I was doing work in healthcare, and I couldn't imagine running my own company or working outside of, the
Established
structure of an
institution.
established business.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, or an established institution. But I went back to the U.S. in 2012 to go to graduate school, and while I was doing my business degree, my friends, I kept on talking about this crazy pipe dream about tomatoes and processing back in Nigeria, and my friends encouraged me to do the numbers. They're like, now you know how to,
Right.
do this, why don't you see if it actually makes sense? And so I decided to spend the last 6 months of my time at business school basically looking to see if Tomato Jos could work, from an economic standpoint, from an
Right.
operational standpoint, from a political standpoint.
Yeah.
And if all three of those things checked off, then I would just go into this and try and do it as a business. And on paper, anyway, it seemed to work out. So we said, let's try and do it in real life.
Yeah. And starting out, what were some of the challenges you had?
So initial challenges, definitely trying to find the right location. We originally set up shop in Nasarawa State. Because it was far enough north to get the tomato season. It was far enough south to be a little bit safe from Boko Haram and some of the other regional crises that were going on. And we had a really kind and nice landlord who allowed us to farm on a portion of his land for free.
Okay.
So that was initially, what enabled us to get set up. But right from the start, that land didn't have enough water. Tomatoes require a huge amount of water.
Right.
If you think about them, they're made 95% of water.
True.
And so that water has to come from somewhere. And we were pumping out of the ground, so it was really expensive. We weren't getting enough. The plants were stressed, and we were getting low yields. A second initial challenge was that I didn't have a technical partner initially. So tomatoes, as I've alluded to, are one of the hardest crops to grow in the world. They're really sensitive. They're really, really sensitive to disease, even though they need a lot of water, they're sensitive to rainfall, they're sensitive to weeds, they're sensitive to a number of other things. And without somebody who has specific expertise in growing tomatoes, it's really hard to do it right. And that's part of the reason why farmers are so unproductive, is because they don't have that technical knowledge.
Right. Okay, and you were talking to us earlier about how you initially intended to go into processing.
Yes.
I mean, for paste.
We still do.
Still do. Still do. But then talk us through how you got to incorporate like the smallhold farmers into your operation.
Sure. So while I was doing my research, I learned that tomato processing is really energy intensive.
Right.
It costs a lot of money, and it's very expensive to run your steam lines. Because if you think about making tomato paste, it's basically taking the tomato and evaporating that water out, so you got to concentrate, right?
Right.
So if you don't have as close to full capacity in your factory as you can, you're going to be producing at a loss. And
Right.
what that means is you need to ensure that you have a steady stream of tomatoes coming into your factory for enough days to make it work.
Right.
And we realized that we should actually focus on that first before we even invest in a factory. So we realized that in order to sort of mitigate some of the risks of geography and disease and some of the other things, we would want not only to have our own farm, but to have other farmers grow for us so that we could really guarantee that sort of steady stream of tomatoes coming into the factory. And that meant we had to not only have our own farms, but also incorporate outgrower farmers.
Right.
And in this case, because most Nigerian farmers are farming on a very small scale, we're talking about smallholder farmers and trying to get them up to the same levels of efficiency as our own farm for them to be able to supply us with the product.
And of course with the same, quality of products.
Right. I mean, it's important for the tomatoes to be very red. It's important for them to be very sweet. It's important for them to be a bit firm so that they can withstand the transport from the farm to the factory.
Right.
And so farmers have to be able to grow those characteristics of tomato, but just as important, they need to be able to farm at the right cost structure so that we can pay them the price that we need to pay as the factory to be profitable,
Yeah.
and they can also make money selling to us at that price. And that means we have to shift their economic structure from low volume, high margin
Right.
to high volume, low margin, right? Can we get them to grow 5 times as much tomatoes, and maybe they're farming at double the cost, and maybe their revenues on a percentage basis are coming down by 5% on the margin, but because the overall amount of tomatoes they sell is much more, they
right.
still end up with a higher profit.
Okay.
And so that's what we're trying to do.
Okay. And what's your capacity at this point?
Our capacity on processing or farming?
Farming for now. I understand that the processing is
Yeah,
still-
the processing is still a work in process, no pun intended. On the farming side, we currently have 35 hectares cleared and able to be cultivated. This season, the nucleus farm is, I think, about 6 hectares in size, and we have an additional 8 hectares of outgrowers.
Okay.
So outgrowers and what we call model farmers who are farming on our land. So that makes up for a total of 14 hectares of tomato this season.
Wow.
We're expecting across the board to get about 15 tons per hectare on average. So 15 times 14 is however many, 2,000 tons of tomatoes, something like that.
Ish.
I don't know, I'm bad at math
math.
on the top of my head. So, but we've already started to sell those tomatoes from the outgrowers into the open markets, and we're expecting to continue to sell the rest of our harvest into the open markets as well.
Okay. And so how many outgrower farmers do you currently have working with you?
We currently have 35 smallholder farmers.
Okay.
Of those, 19 are outgrowers, so 19 of them are working on their own land that they have rented and that they're farming and cultivating on the other side of the dam from us.
Right.
And then the remainder of the remaining farmers are farming on our own land in a section that we've dedicated to them.
Okay. Wonderful. So finally, I'd just like to know, to what extent do you project exponential growth in this particular approach that you've taken towards the value chain?
Sure. So our goal is to develop fully the 500 hectares that we have purchased from the Kaduna State government by 2020. So we're in 2017 right now. That gives us, or 2018. Wow.
Yeah,
Sorry.
2018.
So Tomato Jos has a fiscal year that's like not aligned with the
so it's
calendar
not-
year.
it's
So
not-
we're
it's not
still
quite-
we're
you're
still
still
in
in
fiscal year
2017.
2017. Our
Okay.
year ends on July 31st.
Okay.
We've sort of aligned our year with the tomato cycle. So by calendar year 2020, Tomato Jos year 2019, we hope to have our own factory on ground and the full 500 hectares developed on this land and an additional 50 hectares of outgrowers as well. And that would be able to feed a factory that has 300 ton per day capacity.
Wow.
So that's our goal.
That's
That's
really
our
amazing.
short-term, medium-term goal.
Well, that's amazing. That's amazing. It's, a massive project, and so far, I mean, from what we can see, you guys have done wonderfully well. And, yeah, we'd just like to say congratulations, and we'll be back.
Yes,
Then
well, your
we'll
guys are
keep
always
tabs.
welcome.
We'll keep tabs on you guys.
We have a lot of growth to do, but we're really proud of how far we've come, and we think this is just the beginning of something great.
Yep, it is. It sure is.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you so much, Mira.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, great.